Your brain cannot tell the difference between like fact and or like thoughts and reality. If you tell yourself every day, like, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not like, I'm not whatever, your brain has no ability to discern if that's true or not. So even if you're like, you know, oh, actually, I know I'm smart, but I tell myself every day that I'm stupid. Your brain then believes that you are not smart. Like it just does. So honestly, that gratitude and those affirmations, say them every day. I'm awesome. I'm the freaking best. Like I am going to achieve great things because that coming from internal, your brain will believe that.
Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I am your host and coach, Tyler Johnson. And if you've tuned in to elevate your mindset, your game, or just your day, you are in the right place. My guest this episode is a former collegiate athlete who is now the senior VP with Braincode Centers. She holds her master's in counseling, is in the process of becoming a board-certified professional in neurofeedback. She's an avid fitness and wellness enthusiast. Please welcome to the podcast, Angie Noack. How are you? Welcome.
I am doing great. Thanks for having me.
Excited to have you. I've been curious about your work for a while, so I'm excited to have you on and hear it directly from you. But first, tell us about brain coding and what it is, and then we want to hear how you got into all of that.
Yeah. So Braincode Centers is a brain mapping and neurofeedback. We're actually one of the largest brain mapping and neurofeedback companies in the country. If you're not familiar with brain mapping and neurofeedback, it's a way to quantitatively and electrically essentially change the wave activity happening in our brain. So it's a way to rewire the brain, if you will. We work from anything from anxiety, depression, ADD, trauma, PTSD, peak performance, concussions. All of those things are things that we specialize in. So for people who are really wanting to optimize their brain on a neurological level, that's who we are.
Love it. And what led you into this work and fascination with the brain?
Yeah, so I couple different things. I honestly feel like neurofeedback kind of found me. I did not find it. I did my master's in clinical mental health. I have licensure in clinical mental health. And then before I graduated with my master's, I was connected with a coworker at the time to talk about neurofeedback. And then when I graduated, basically they called me and said, hey, you have to come on with us. I also kind of had a neuro background. I had a head injury when I was 19, and so was very kind of brain based from that point moving forward because I knew a lot about my brain and had done a lot of concussion recovery. So it really was, whether you believe in the Lord or the universe, like kind of coming full circle and like pulling me, into something that once I got into it, I was like, oh, this is what I'm meant for. This is what I should be doing. So I honestly feel like neurofeedback kind of tracked me down.
Very cool. You mentioned you were an athlete. Tell us a little bit about that and kind of how does that influence any of the work that you do now? And I know you kind of probably work with some athletes. Tell us a little bit about how that influences your work.
We get to work a ton with athletes, which is really cool. So yeah, I played a bunch of different sports, but I played soccer through high school and then into college until I had a head injury. I also played golf in high school and then on and I still get to play. Thank goodness, low impact. It's something like I remember literally playing junior golf when I was like 9. I was like, I hate golf. And now as an adult, I'm like, I love golf. I'm so thankful I know how to play golf. Wish I had 20 hours a week to go out and play. So it's funny how, the times turn.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that to be a high quality athlete, like you have to have a certain amount of drive, also a certain amount of like neurological power. And I think that as times change and we have this, kind of age of like super athletes, right? That our athletes have nothing, holding them back. They have access to everything in the whole world, all the supplements, all the trainers, all the things. But we all tend to focus pretty heavily neck down, right? That
Yeah.
we're building muscle and we're working out and we're doing all these things. I honestly believe that your best asset as a person, as an athlete, is your brain. And if you are not working out your brain just like you would any other muscle group, you're not doing it right. So a lot of these athletes, there was actually a documentary called The Quarterback, and it was Kirk Cousins talked about neurofeedback and that he has done neurofeedback for years, right? And why? And I could name like 50 different athletes. I won't and can't because of, privacy laws, but this really is, it's a trend that we're seeing that athletes are starting to catch on to. Oh, wait, you can train your brain. Oh, wait, your brain can be optimized just like your body. So I really do see, so many athletes really starting to kind of take advantage of that.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up that example. Also in that episode, Dr. Brownell Mack, who's been on the podcast, as a sports psychologist he works with.
Yeah,
It was great. And I think it's interesting because I think I'd love to hear kind of, from your perspective, how the combination of those things from, having a sports psychologist in a therapeutic setting, and then this brain training that's helping us, do something a little bit different, but altogether really trying to optimize who we are so we can perform at our best. Can you talk a little
totally.
bit about how that differentiates, and how the mapping and coding is that training physical
Yeah.
gym for our brain?
I would say it's the hardware versus the software, right? Software, like our brains ultimately are a computer, right? And if your brain needs a software update, if your computer needs it, do it. If it has a hardware issue, a software update's never really going to touch that. So they're just totally different. That when it comes to, the psychological aspect, right? A lot of us struggle with performance anxiety. Golf is actually a really big and obvious one because it's a slow sport, right? Think about you hit a bad tee shot on 17. You know how much time you have to walk from your bad tee shot to the trees or the bunker or wherever you just shanked your ball? A lot of time. And that's a lot of time for your body to kick into fight or flight, right? Your brain, your central nervous system to start going haywire. And that's when we see these guys, these professional athletes crumble, right? And you go from 5 under par to what the heck just happened? We see this all the time. And it's like, why is that? Because they were very physically tough. They might have not been mentally training, right? And if your brain, your brain's always going to take the path of least resistance. So we kind of call it like a head case, right? You have those kids, you have those athletes that you're like, that guy's a head case. They have all the talent in the world. They don't have the ability to like take control of their brain. So the psychological aspect of it, I think there's so many things that we can work through, right? There's so many things that we need to talk about. What are these limiting beliefs that we have, right? Why, where's the confidence issue? What's going on that psychological level? Okay, but let's say that we have talked about, let's say we've processed through and we're still having issues. All right, that tells me probably we also have a neurological thing going on. And that's really what neuro is going to do. We're going to do a brain map and literally look at all aspects of the brain, but through the lens of brain waves, because humans are capable of producing the same brain waves. Delta, deep, slow sleep, theta, drifting into sleep, alpha is a receptor, beta, clean energy, high beta is fight or flight. And we need it. We need all those waves. If we are in danger, high beta tells us, holy cow, I got to get the heck out of here. If we're trying to go to sleep at night, if we're trying to be focused and motivated, if we're trying to get the job done and our brain is lit with fast wave activity, that's never going to serve us well, right? And even though we're doing a brain map at a moment in time, I'm not only looking at that moment in time, I'm looking at the patterns that that person has created over the last 18, 20, 35 years. And looking, it's kind of like a tapestry of the brain. So I'm going to be able to see exactly what they feel like and what their brain looks like when it's in fight or flight and what it's in at a resting state. And then we can literally teach it to, rather than when they get into that moment and when we think like, I'll just overcome it, I'll just be, mentally tough, I'll just tell myself to do differently. And then we get there and we're like, our heart's racing and our brain's racing and our palms are sweating. And it's like, well, what the heck? No, our brain has been taught to do something different. So we don't have the same somatic physiological response.
Yeah, love that. And how long does it take to do an initial mapping?
Yeah, the brain map. So one, we do have, I mean, gosh, we have multiple locations here in Colorado. We have a location in Tulsa, we have a location in Dallas, and then we have a global remote program. So you can literally be anywhere in the world and we can do brain mapping and neurofeedback. So whether it's an in-person brain map or remote brain map, it's going to take about an hour for us to collect all of that data. And then it's a separate hour. Basically, we take all the data, which brain waves look like a bunch of squiggly lines, kind of like heartbeats. And we analyze that, put it into more of a readable brain map report. And then on a separate day, at a separate time, we go over all that data with that person to talk through, hey, here's what we're seeing, here's what's going on. Honestly, I very rarely do a brain map where someone is like, I had no idea, right? Like, no, you probably do know, that I shouldn't tell you a whole lot about your brain that you don't already know. I'm just telling you where it's coming from. And then it's not just happening in your head, right? It's happening neurologically in your brain.
One of the other things that struck me as you described it, it made me think of the phrase I hear a lot from athletes is, I I don't know, I'm in my own head. And then sometimes they can identify something deeper of what that is, and sometimes they can't,
Yeah,
but they know that there's got this barrier to perform.
that's right.
So if a teenage athlete came in and was like, that's why I'm curious about neurofeedback and trying it out. What would you anticipate from your observations might be kind of be going on with that, you
A
know?
teenager in this day and age has a ton of fast wave activity. It's not even a question in my mind. So if they're struggling with performance anxiety, right? They're in their head, we kind of call it that, right? Like a head case. Like that person is so, in their head, all the things. I'm gonna bet, that their brain is a lot of excess fast wave activity, beta and high beta, the two fastest brain waves. And when I see that, when I see a lot of excess fast wave activity, it's actually sucking energy away from slow wave activity. Because as human beings, we have a finite amount of electrical energy, not infinite. So if the brain is kind of pumping out that tons and tons of fast, it just doesn't leave anything left over for slow. So I think that that person, yes, maybe they have some, performance anxiety around sports, things like that. I also am going to imagine they probably have some test anxiety. Maybe they're a little bit reactive, with their parents. Also, our youth right now spend half their time on phones or on computers
Yeah.
or playing video games. So when you take an already stimulated brain and make it even more stimulated, if there are parents listening, there's a book called Glow Kids. It's about the technology addiction in America. And if you look at a brain map of a kid addicted to technology, it is almost identical to a brain map of an adult addicted to cocaine. So, we think like, oh, a little bit of screen time. Okay, yeah, a little bit of social media. Okay, then we have these deeply overstimulated, hypervigilant brains. I mean, 10 years ago, we weren't seeing the anxiety and the depression and the suicidal ideation that we're seeing in kids now. So, all
Yeah.
these things kind of culminate together to have these like just lit brains.
Yeah. I read a book not too long called The Anxious Generation.
Mm.
Have you
I
read?
haven't read it, but
It
yeah.
shares a lot of the impacts of the glow kid, this upbringing. Yeah, and I think there's these. I'd love to hear kind of the healthy ways we can build healthy dopamine circuits.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to compete with some of these games and digital things that are delivering dopamine to our brains at a rate that we never
Crazy.
experienced at that age. And
No.
in a class we couldn't replicate without technology 10, 20 years ago
Yeah.
with these dopamine delivery systems that we have digitally. Um, but what are some healthy non-digital dopamine things that we can do to
Yeah.
help develop our young people and ourselves as coaches?
That's a great question. So, we think that our dopamine system, our reward system, is designed to experience a dopamine hit when we have achieved a goal, right? Actually, our dopamine system is designed to like try to achieve a goal. So our dopamine system wants to be working towards something all the time. Yes, it's going to get a hit at the end. It's going to get way more along the way. So I would say goal setting with your athletes, with your kids, with your youth. And I don't mean just like thinking about goals. You are actually 42% more likely to achieve a goal just by writing it down. And so whether that's an academic goal, hey, what is something we want to achieve, this semester, or an athletic goal, if you run a mile, a 10-minute mile, okay, the goal is to run a 9-minute mile. How are we going to get there? Because their brains are going to create a lot more dopamine and experience a lot more of that reward system trying to achieve that goal and working to achieve it. Also, now we're getting into work ethic. Now, I won't even get into all that. Just the dopamine that's going to create a lot different patterns by having them do these other physical or mental things. So set goals with your students and make them write them down, right? Also that you keep them accountable, they keep themselves, and maybe their teams keep them accountable, and then work towards that. And then when you go back and oh yes, we've achieved these goals, set more. We should always be working and achieving goals.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up. because I think my experience with a lot of student athletes are they have these goals. When you ask them what their goals are, they're mostly season oriented, where you won't really know if they meet that goal, whether it's an award or a statistical number, till the end of the season.
Hmm.
Right. And that's so that, again, like you said, that achievement is pretty months away from now.
Yeah.
And what I find, especially student athletes, college athletes too, is breaking down that goal. And I think sometimes coaches don't understand, well, like, no, this is why they need to help reverse engineer, back them up
Yeah.
day by day, week by week, how they're going to get there,
Yeah.
because it's going to create a different pathway.
That's exactly right. And even if they don't technically achieve that goal, their brain will have experienced so much reward along the way of trying to achieve that goal,
Mhm.
right? If you haven't read Atomic Habits, it's one of my favorite books and one that all of our youth should also read. The author at the beginning talks about a severe brain injury that he experienced through athletics and these different things, but then creating systems. You're right. Because also, if we create all these goals, like, I want to be lead quarterback, I don't know, right? Like, that's my, okay, I want it. Also, we're in an instant gratification. We are in an Amazon Prime generation. I want it today. I thought
Yeah.
about it. I want it. I should have it. I deserve it. Why? You know what I mean? We're also in an everybody gets an award, everybody gets a trophy generation. And no, ma'am, nope, everybody's not a winner. There are winners and
Yeah.
there are losers. And that's life. And also that's how it should be. I remember my mom is amazing and she's a savage. When I was a kid and I would have, soccer seasons, I was playing on all these different teams. If we had a losing season, all the parents on the team were like, the kids still need trophies. And my mom was like, and she literally would sit us down, my sisters and I, and she was like, this trophy means nothing. Like, you're getting this trophy because I'm not going to be that parent on the team who's like, you're not going to give my kid a trophy. But she was like, this trophy means nothing. You had a losing season. This means nothing. So then when my team won state, junior and senior year of high school, she was like, that trophy means something. And it did, because I knew what a losing season was and I knew what a winning season
Yeah.
was versus there's not always winners. So again,
Yeah.
though, working towards those goals and increasing that. So, but back to systems, right? That this isn't just going to happen. So like you said, back it up. What is something that we're going to do daily, right? If especially youth is also very focused on like motivation, right? If I don't
Yeah.
feel motivated today, motivation doesn't do a whole lot. It's consistency, right?
Yeah.
It like you show up even if you don't want to. So if it's, if is the goal this week that you only have practice 4 days this week, but the other 3 days, like your butt is on the field or at the gym or whatever that is, that's going to give you the extra edge. And it's creating those systems so that they are able to at least have the steps to try and achieve those goals.
Yeah. Uh, you made me flash back to when I was a kid. I remember I swam a little bit and then I ran a lot of track, but I would only keep the top three. If it was a ribbon or a medal, if it wasn't the top, I was like, the rest of them went in another box. I was like,
Why do you have
uh,
something
I,
that's
I,
not top
I,
three?
I was like, what's this? Purple, orange? I don't know what I know what top
10th
three look like.
place. Why,
And I
why do
think
I have a 10th place ribbon? No.
the studies show that kids are more intuitive than the parents handing them out, that they know
Yeah.
when they've lost, they know when they weren't number one. And you almost are trying to, they almost know they're being kind of, I think some studies show, like, deceived by their own parents.
That's correct.
And
And for what? Like to because we don't want kids to experience disappointment or
yeah,
setback or letdown. That's a very critical part of brain development and of life.
yeah, yeah.
Let them experience that. That's a good thing.
My mom was a golf coach in the first class of Title IX and golfed in college. Also savage on the pushing me. That's where I got my edge.
That's the best.
But that's where very much I think where I also got that from was this, she had competed at high levels and then it was coaching. And to back to your point, one of the things she always says, she had some really good players and she was like, I don't coach their swings. I coach them in between shots.
Hmm.
Is that what they're walking, that really kind of thing. And I think
Oh
what I'd love
man.
to hear your input and some of your thoughts on is we see kids struggle with the fear of failure, it getting multiplied on social media, or if there's peers are observing it in sport. How can we help young people overcome that fear of failure when we know it takes reps and mistakes to get to the places we want to get to.
One, letting them fail and realizing that you don't die, is like the best. Let them fail.
Yeah.
And then, you know what I mean? Like you learn far more from your failures. Also, let them see you fail, right? Let them say you experience letdown and loss. Like protecting our kids from everything does them no good and it does us no good, right? That, let them fail. Let them see you fail. Talk about it. Communication, right? That so then and also so then when they do win or like celebrate that, right? Experience the losses, grieve the losses. That's okay. Hey, this was a bad season. Why did that happen? Why was it? Let's talk about that. How do we change it for next season? It's also, communication. And that's a coach, that's a parent. All of that, I believe, is we're able to do that through better communication. I think there are very good communicators out there. And then people, again, who I believe have the best of intentions, but want to shelter their families or their kids or their athletes from that. And it's not going to serve them well.
Yeah. And I think you see often in sports parenting where, kind of like we talked about earlier, the goal and the journey, they kind of want to just circumvent the breakdown and just help them get to the end point.
Yeah.
Um,
Just be the best. Okay.
hard to do, very much. And I think we're just seeing more and more studies of athletes that I think it was the study I just saw, of all the people that have played in the Little League World Series for all the years, the thousands and thousands of kids, only 64 of them ever made the Major League Baseball. And it shows how I think the development and the ongoing and the intrinsic things,
Mhm.
circumventing those, in sports, a lot of times has the disappointment of leaving a sport too early and leaving team environments too early. And kids then lack the coaches or infrastructure to hopefully build some of those things that we intended sport to hopefully do.
Yeah.
How do
And I
you,
mean, whether or not somebody, intends on becoming a professional athlete or not, I think that the life lessons that you learn in youth sports,
yeah, the path, yeah, right. These are
critical, incredible.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think we fall back on those, those lifelong skills. How do you see sometimes parents disrupt that process in young people? Sometimes we talked about kind of the over rewarding um, aspect of it. Are there other ways that you see sometimes the snowplow or helicopter parent um, undermining the development of young people when
You
it comes to
know,
special social emotional learning, especially?
Yeah, the nuclear family, like your family at home, is, one of the biggest aspects of your development. And I really believe that parents, if you're like a halfway decent person, you're doing the best you can. I really believe that, that if you're overcoaching, it's because you want the best for your kid and maybe, you're living through them a little bit. You didn't become the athlete, whatever. And parents who, maybe are less present, maybe they're busting their ass to, pay for all their kids' sports. So they're working as right. Like I honestly believe that people are truly doing the best that they can. I definitely have been in situations, where whether it's neurofeedback or, sports or something that like there's a reason why coaches are coaches and a reason why you are not a coach. And so parents, stepping in, like if you, if they're on a team, I would hope that you would believe and trust in the coaching that they have. If you think that they need private coaching or something, great, then, pay for that or whatever, or put them in that. But letting it also be that separation, that let a coach chew them out, you know what I mean? And then you get to be the parent versus you're the parent, you're the coach, you're the teacher, you're the so I also do believe that let the coach ream them about the worst game ever, and then you get to be the parent to say, hey, listen to your coach, hey, did you have fun? You get to be the encourager versus they get chewed out for the crappy game and then they go home and you also ream them.
Yeah,
I don't think hammering the point home, like it is going to do that much more.
yeah. I find that interesting too. I think, yeah, there's that the parent usually sometimes doesn't know all that went on.
Yeah.
and and either often if they did, they would probably support the coach. Maybe not the methodology they did it by, but they would be like the value that they're trying to reinstill. And then
Yeah.
if it was the opposite, then it's an opportunity for them as a parent to, hey, how did you understand that? How did you experience that?
Yeah.
What could you do differently?
Hmm.
Um, and that's where I think we start to limit some thinking.
Yeah. Also, sometimes parents, and this is, man, this makes me very sad when parents, you were the best, it was your team. You're awesome. Everybody else. Ooh, that's so it makes me cringe. That one, if it's a team sport, especially, then you win and lose as a team. That's it. That I don't care if you were the star and I don't care if everybody else played the worst, then be better and make your team better. I don't know what to
Yeah,
do, but there's no you're the best and your team is not good enough. And like we also, live in we worship our kids and our kids are the best thing ever. Your kid's probably not the best thing ever. And that's okay because for them to actually be really great, like again, it's okay for them to experience
yeah,
failure. It's okay for them to not be the best. And you telling them that they're the best thing ever 24/7, I actually don't think
yeah,
it's not it.
yeah. When you say that, you're just it's hard to develop a leader when you say that a lot. You hear
Or it's
that a
going to be
lot.
a dictator because they're the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah. It's like, you know what? Yeah. And I think it's like, yeah, just example you said, it's like, man, we want great teammates to lead them up, help them get better,
Yeah,
not, point out the talent flaws and
for
things
sure.
like that. Comes to brain health, especially our student athletes, their, cortexes are still solidifying up there and things like that.
That's
Um,
correct.
they're very they're not great at sleeping, obviously, with some of the digital things we mentioned. Um, they're sometimes not great at fueling their systems in their bodies. I know coaches are like, did you eat breakfast? Did you eat anything? What are
For
some
sure.
ways that we can help encourage our student athletes to sleep better, and then maybe a few sources of great foods to help our developing brains?
Man, that is a toughie. My niece is 17 and all the time, like not on school nights, but on the weekends, I was up till 2 a.m. Angie, I'm like, one, but I remember those days and it was like such a treat. Now a treat is every night when I go to bed at 8 because I'm 100 years old. Like I don't ever want to stay up late, ever. I think education is a big component of that. It's just hammering it in when they're young. Are they going to follow it? Not necessarily, but at least then at some point they have that foundation of information, right? My mom is a savage and she's the best. She raised us. I remember my sisters and I like, Mom, can we please have cereal? She's like, cereal is processed trash. I was like, what does that even mean? And now as an adult, I'm like, cereal is processed trash. I'm like, look at that red dye set. Like I know all the things, but because it was instilled in me. Now, in college, was I eating Taco Bell? Yes, I was. Gross. But like now, but truly, I always had that foundation to fall back on. So then as an adult, I was like, oh, wait, my mom was 100% right about everything. And going back to then that foundation of information. So I really do feel like even if they're not listening, they hear you. So
Yeah.
if you are giving them that information, which is setting your circadian rhythm, having a good nighttime routine. Also, my sister is like just the best thing ever. My niece doesn't have social media. She's 17. She has a phone, but it's one of those phones where it's like only can call like three numbers, which is like her grandma, my sister, and her dad. And she has like only a certain amount of texting. And I'm sure that many parents and many kids would be like, that's stone age. No, my niece is confident and
Good.
loves herself and loves her body and has a
Yeah.
great head on her shoulders and has a 4.0 GPA and doesn't hate all the things and isn't deeply depressed or anxious. And not to say that she wouldn't deal with some of those things anyways, but get your kids off of social media, get your
Yeah.
kids off of their phones, uh, get it like truly, I don't know how to say it any other way. It's poisoning their brains. Food wise, honestly, make your kids drink water. Like bare minimum, make them drink some freaking water. They're probably running around on the field 100% dehydrated all the time. I was.
Yeah.
I had like the worst calf cramps ever. And I was like, why is that? Because I had a drop of water today, this week. So again, give them a foundation, make the healthy meals. You can't control what they're eating at, at their friend's house or at school or all those other things. You can control what goes on in your home.
Yeah. One proud parent moment. My daughter's 5 and she knows that. We've joked. It's like she knows if I point at Taco Bell, I go, "What's that?" She goes, "Tummy hurt, tummy hurt."
She bad day.
She
What
knows
is
she
that?
knows I won't eat at Taco Bell. Yeah, she's like,
That a
I
girl?
was like,
Honestly,
it's like, no, that's a tummy. That's a no good tummy place.
my best friend slash business partner, her son is 7, and he knows too much. We'll bring something and he's like, that's full of processed stuff. That he knows everything. He looks at the labels of stuff, which I'm
yeah,
like, I think he might be a little bit too knowledgeable. But
yeah,
absolutely, that he is aware of. People will offer him, at school, like, do you want this cupcake? He's like, no. He also is aware that when he has a headache or a stomach ache, Rachel will say, like, do you know why that is? Do you remember what you ate
yeah.
today? And he'll be like,
Mhm.
yeah, okay, I do. Again, knowledge base.
Yeah. And I think the other thing connecting some of these dots is can you talk about the power of when we do measure things? I think when athletes, we've gotten to some great devices, whether it's our Whoop and our auras that can track some of our things that are going on inside of us. And then we compare that sometimes with a journal for our thoughts and
Yeah.
then a log of our nutrition. You can really start to get a picture. And a lot of college athletes, they're have to track all those things every day. They're
Mm-hmm.
taking pictures of plates that they're sending their nutritionist and so that they can optimize.
Mm-hmm.
But can you talk about the importance and some of that great motivation that can come from when we start to track and understand ourselves?
Mm-hmm. So the answer is twofold. One, I'm a literal sociopath. I track everything, like everything. I wear the aura. Like if it would never die because I would never allow it to die because I want to know everything. Especially when our brains are underdeveloped, a kid, and I mean, boys, their brains don't fully develop until about 30, girls, it's around 25. What I don't want to have happen, especially in an age of like extreme body image, is that when we're that young, especially if you are like a pretty, like higher end athlete, eat the food. Don't track so many things, so
Yeah.
I am definitely a pro of tracking some things. I also think that that pendulum can swing really far where now we track everything and obsessively, and I do think that I would say more so in girls than in boys, not always,
Mhm.
but that I would say if you're an athlete, like, your body's running off of carbs. Make sure that like freaking eat those carbs. And, now there's trash carbs and there's good carbs. Like I'm not saying crush a bag of
Right.
chips every day, but eat higher protein. But where's your protein coming from? So definitely I'm a fan of tracking. Now, sleep tracking, I do think you should be friggin' sleep tracking, like when do you go to sleep at night? When do you wake up? There's
Yeah.
literally certain valves of your brain that only open up during certain aspects of sleep. So if you only got 3 hours of light sleep last night, your brain wasn't able to release in the way that it needed to. So you feel like crap today. But especially for the food tracking and now everything is so at our fingertips. Like, yeah, you don't even have to track calories. You just take a picture of it and it tells you exactly what's in it. Um, mm, you
It's
know,
pretty suspect. You're pretty
mm,
suspect to that.
there's a little bit of suspect to that. And, I'm kind of the 80-20 rule that like 80% of the time I'm trying to do everything right. I
Yeah.
don't, and then the other 20% of the time, see you freaking later. Like whatever Angie wants, Angie gets. But that's 20%. The other 80, do it right. And I think that's a good rule of thumb in life.
Yeah, I do. I know having some experience with a few of the apps they use in college, they do deploy a lot of safeguards against some of the dietary things that can be negative, and so they don't fully report on some of those things that aren't important, or to give, or they're not seen by the athlete
And I think
for their recording.
that's wise because yeah, unfortunately, it can swing the other way where now you have, somebody who's probably burning 3,000 calories a day trying to eat 1,200 calories a day.
It's
Mm,
that's certainly my experience is always just that's what most of the nutrition more you need more. It's usually more calories.
more,
You're burning them at such a rate.
100%.
And on that, being a student athlete, can you obviously college athlete up to 20 hours a week physically? talk about the cognitive load and the caloric load that our brains must take. And then we
Yeah,
have an athlete that's got these physical demands and then some academic demands and probably wants to have a life and some social demands in there.
totally.
We've only got so much cognitive load. Can you talk about how we can better understand that?
So one, I would say that, and gosh, and who I was in high school is definitely not who I am now. Um, a lot of procrastination happens. One, I honestly believe that we probably have time to fit in all the things. We don't if we're not managing our time well. So that's also something that I believe that coaches, parents, teachers can really work with students on is like time management, right? That if you have a paper due in 3 weeks, yes, you can do it the night before and have it be extremely stressful, or you can start it now and write one paragraph a day. It's going to be done way sooner and way better. And that really just is time blocking and time management. That unfortunately too is like a very adult skill that I believe our youth would be far better learning younger than older, but it is a very adult skill. So as much as we can teaching time management, having calendars. I didn't have a phone when I was, or maybe I think I got a phone when I was like 16 and could pay for it, but it was like a straight flip phone, you know what I mean? That was like, hey mom, like
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
19 pounds. Everybody, most people have some type of a calendar, on their phone. So, if you can you do stuff before school? Maybe, what time is your practice? How much homework do you have? Because, it is student athlete, student is first. If you're
Yeah.
not, I believe that doing a sport is a privilege, versus a lot of times the sport it's athlete, student athlete,
Yeah.
really that I believe that developing the brain is probably more important than being really good at a
Right.
sport. So yeah, I think the best thing that we can do is truly time management and teaching them to block time and to try to not procrastinate. When I say try to not procrastinate, procrastination happens for a reason, and it's usually anxiety or lack of motivation. That's probably a good thing that if your student is probably very intelligent but has absolutely no motivation to do well in school, let's take a look at their brain. Come in and let's do a
Yeah.
brain map and let's figure
Yeah.
out why that is, because that's not it's like, well, they're 16. It's actually not normal to have absolutely no motivation to do well in school or to do homework or, is this an anxiety thing? Are they, feeling kind of crippled by anxiety? Or truly, do they just have, are they under
Yeah.
motivated because their brain is producing a lot of theta in the prefrontal? We can work on that.
Uh, a young man that I coached years ago was not getting the grades. Either it was a couple of his teammates, so they were pulled out of practice to have study table,
Yeah.
and they were trusted in that room. And when went to go check on them, the one young man was not doing his work. He was, however, tutoring and helping all of his teammates, but not doing any of his own stuff. And so while I was impressed with this leadership, this initiative and leadership, and could see his capabilities while he helped others, he was not helping himself.
Yeah.
And I was,
You're also in the study group.
yeah, I was like, okay, they're going to be eligible next week, but you're still not. Like we need to,
Yeah.
but it was kind of this perplexing. I was like, I know you want to, like, man, but yeah, for me, I was just like, I want to know inside you. I
Yeah.
want to read. I wish I could
I,
read your
I want to look
brain.
at that kid's brain. He sounds incredible. It just like, why are you not motivated to do it for you? What's going
He,
on here?
he figured out the right gear. He's playing college football. And so, but I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, you're a great leader. You've got capabilities, but you're not putting the energy where you need to.
Hmm.
There's a Molly Fletcher had on the podcast a long time ago. It's like dubbed the female Jerry Maguire, sports agent. She wrote a book called, and I think it's becoming more and more relevant, called The Energy Clock,
Mm.
about time management and more of where do your systems need to be throughout your schedule and how you flow family work,
Yeah.
like, and I see as kids stay up late and these cycles are not as circadian, like they need to pay more attention, and some of that happens when you're a high level athlete. Look at the conferences that reshuffled. They're traveling across country. That has
Right.
detriments to sleep and recovery, and
These
so
travel teams, it's wild. It was never, maybe they did exist when I was a kid. I have no idea. I was not on them. But you're right that, my volleyball team, we're in 3 different states next month. What? That's that's bananas. But also, okay, so if that is the case, you're right. How do we as parents organize like study time and, get that, also when do you study best? And everyone is different. That if you're exhausted at 7 p.m. after dinner, after practice, after all the things, and now it's like, now hit the books. That's probably not super, conducive to great learning. So is that we wake up earlier in the morning and go to bed later and do homework in the morning, that's not, for everybody, but figure out when you also know that you learn best.
Well, I would sure we could nerd out for a long time because I would still ask a lot of brain questions. But in closing, in the things that you've learned in your career and you went back to your teenage self and what you've learned, what's a message you would tell your teenage self about or remind yourself?
Oh my gosh. Well, truly, who I was, like I told you, who I was in high school is not who I am now. I gave zero craps about school. I was the worst. I think I was late every single day in high school. I don't even, I lived 2 blocks away from the school. I was late every day. It was ridiculous. Um, I would probably tell that person, you are capable of so much more. Like, just know that, what the limiting beliefs that you have about yourself, that either you're not worthy or you're not good enough or you're not going to achieve what you want to achieve. Like, that's not true. That's bullshit. And, honestly, internal belief. Fortunately, I had a great family around me that boosted me and that, knew what I was capable of when I maybe didn't. But having that internal belief and telling yourself that your brain cannot tell the difference between like fact and or like thoughts and reality. If you tell yourself every day, like, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not like, I'm not whatever, your brain has no ability to discern if that's true or not. So even if you're like, oh, actually, I know I'm smart, but I tell myself every day that I'm stupid. Your brain then believes that you are not smart. Like it just does. So honestly, that gratitude and those affirmations, say them every day. I'm awesome. I'm the freaking best. Like I am going to achieve great things because that coming from internal, your brain will believe that.